If you've ever watched this show, you'll know that I love a good fact-checking gone wrong story, and I promise you this one is a doozy. Over in the United States, fact-checking activists at Snopes were quick to pour water over a story claiming the Biden administration would spend millions and millions of dollars handing out crack pipes to advance racial equity. It's true that the grant description required the provision of harm reduction supplies and listed safe smoking kits as an example, an established component of harm reduction strategy, but in reality, those kits constituted just one of several subcomponents of an even longer list of requirements for grant recipients. In other words, while outraged media focused almost extensively on crack pipes, this was actually only a very small part of the program. The fact check went on to state that the taxpayer-funded crack pipes was actually, quote, quite logical to reduce harm, rather than to advance racial equity. So that means the factual statement of the scheme's existence was, quote, mostly false. And this is what really bothers me about radical left-wing policies the most. These people don't even back their own policies. If people talk about the details of the plans, they say, oh no, that's fake news. If you genuinely thought it was a good plan, you'd mark the news as completely true and you'd say, yes, this is great, that's why it's happening. No, instead the journalists who uncover this insanity are persecuted, defamed and kicked off social media platforms by lazy big tech operations who have outsourced fact-checking to idiots like Snopes writers. But the story gets even better. After the US Department of Health and Human Services backflipped on the scheme amid understandable public concern, Snopes went in and changed the fact-check to, quote, outdated. Yes, because it was no longer happening, because the journalist exposed the bad policy. Snopes says it is all now outdated, nothing to see here, and move along. These people are not fit to be Instagram bloggers, let alone arbiters of truth. Thankfully, we have people like journalists at Fox News who mercilessly mocked Snopes for this entire insane saga. They splashed with smoke and mirrors and proceeded to fact-check the fact-checkers. Now, let's bring in the panel. Sophie, how would you grade the performance of Snopes fact-checkers during Biden's reign in the White House? And how would you compare it to, I guess, how they fact-checked Donald Trump and stories against him, such as maybe Russiagate, for example?
Well, these fact-checkers really, Jack, they actually need to be fact-checked themselves. This is very confusing for people to understand what is actually truth here and what is not. And there's obviously agendas here that they're wanting to push. So when it suits their agenda, the fact-check will go the way that they want it to go. This is incredibly confusing for readers and digesters of news to understand what is going on. But we've seen this time and time again, Jack, in terms of how the media treats stories over in the US. When it comes to Biden, he's given soft gloves, and when it was coming to Trump, he was given hard gloves. But they've seen this unravel. Biden's performance has been dismal, his policies have been dismal, and this is just another example of this at play here, Jack.
Yeah, and Caroline, I think there's another fairly serious element to it, and it's the tech giant censorship that follows the fact check. So you might think, well, this is ridiculous and it's a bit of a funny story, but the ramifications are, if you're a journalist that shared the story, and it's true, there were taxpayer funds going to the distribution of crack pipes, and a journalist pointed that out, and he gets called mostly false because the journalist thinks it's a good policy. Are we getting into this really strange realm where there is too much power for these people?
Look, I think it is a strange realm when we enter the space of there is no objective truth. It's just my truth, your truth, and we're all speaking our truth. Yes. And I'm sure the writers at Snopes think they're speaking their truth. But if you look at the fine print on that original assertion that it was mostly false, they even admit, no, it's actually true. But it's just we don't like where they've placed the emphasis and the headline and the angle that they've gone with.
It's true, but it's a small part of the grant.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't like how you've presented the story, even though by anyone's standards, surely that's the headline, that's the lead here, that they were including, they were planning to include crack pipes. in these kits for addicts. It's crazy. And not just that, but prioritizing so-called underserved communities like blacks and LGBTQI. So basically, if you're black or you're trans or you're non-binary, it'll be easier for you to get your free crack pipe. It's just insanity, Jack. But I think that ultimately, I think it's a good thing, because I think that it will expose these fact-checking sites as not objective, as just brazenly partisan, and it just discredits them ultimately.
Yep. And what we need is the social media giants to say, we're not going to use these guys anymore. We're not going to de-rank content. It has commercial ramifications, and it's just, quite frankly, undemocratic. But look, thank you so much for joining me. And Sophie, thank you so much for your time.